women within the community who wanted to address this issue because they were so moved by it from the Chaos Joel community, and they came out with something. I'm not sure. What was like the aftermath of the article like?
See, actually, it was interesting. It was that newspaper that's up there, you know, in Monroe.
The Block.
No, the newspaper, the secular newspaper.
Village Voice.
Not the Village Voice. It's the Times Herald, something, the record. So they had this article with these women speaking about this article that I wrote, right? And they said it was how horrible it was. So it turned out that I'm reading the article, I'm going like, and I actually was quoted in the article. So I'm reading the article, and it turns out that the two women that are talking are not from this community at all. One of them is actually a Lubavitcher, and this other woman is some kind of professor. And the only person from the community who actually talked about it refused to speak on the record. They only would do it, like, you know, anonymously. So I'm thinking, like, you know, I'm reading all this stuff on the internet where these people like are attacking the article, and nobody was willing to use their real name. But they're like, I just want to have a normal conversation so we can, like, you know, get to some kind of points, whether I made a mistake or I didn't. I'm not trying to defend myself. I'm interested in starting a discussion. So the thing is, if you're talking to people who refuse to actually enter into a real discussion, we just want to, like, slag you behind some kind of, like, internet name and then change that name to some other name, I mean, it makes it difficult to have a normal conversation. Why? Yeah, they're scared. Yeah, so I mean, like, why are they scared?
I mean, have you ever gone onto the internet? Everybody uses their real name.
But I'm saying
I'm thinking about why isn't somebody this woman who wrote me a letter, said, like, I always liked your work, but I didn't like this and I was disappointed in it. So I wrote her back personally, right? Because I felt like, well, you know, she took the trouble to write me personally, blah blah blah. It's what I should do. It's what a normal human being would do. But she still wouldn't use her real name. I mean, I don't understand that. You know, why is that? And I said, like, why don't you use your real name? She's like, look, I don't want to cause any trouble for myself.
Well, I'm sure you can understand that if you're Chaos Joel and you have sympathies with you, then there might be a problem.
Well, she was saying all these horrible things about me. It was fine. You know,
but I mean, Judith Miller protected her sources also. I mean,
He couldn't find one guy to get.
I mean, like, this had nothing to do. It was never going to be published. It was just between me and her. I mean, I think they got like a slightly over. You know, I'm not trying to overstate the case, but I mean, nobody here would really think that Curious Joel is in a situation where, like, there's like any kind of democracy is running there, you know, that kind of stuff. It's not the way it's set up. And are they comfortable with it? Well, I don't think everybody's comfortable with it. And why if they feel so secure in their way of doing things, why do they get so upset after you say one bad thing?
If you leave openness as a sin, it's a form of a sin. That's the Hashem. You're afraid of causing a sin by talking about certain issues.
I mean, Rob?
I got three short questions. One, did you read all 6,000 talkbacks? Number two, you start saying a number of times.
I got a little weary after a while, I gotta say.
You didn't read
I read the first 1,000, so, you know.
Number two, you said a number of times that there were certain things you would do differently if you had to write it again. But you kept getting cut off and you never shared with us any one of the things you would do differently. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, as I told you before, I mean, there were some things I actually did do differently, but, and this is not an excuse at all, but it's just like a process of writing magazine journalism, you know. I mean, the thing could have been 20,000 words long, but they're never going to run that much. So it's 7,000 words long. It's still one of the longest articles they've ever run. But all this stuff gets cut out. It's a complicated issue, right? It's a complicated issue. So therefore, yeah, I did talk to some people that were there, and then I felt that, like, well, wasn't that, they didn't say anything that was really that interesting. So, and so just to say, like, well, a lot of people in the community say that Giddy is full of shit. Okay, so I can put that in, and then people say, well, at least you talked to somebody, but what's that going to add, you know? But the thing is, I feel I should have done it anyhow, just to make people feel that it was more even-handed. But it wasn't, you know, I don't feel nobody there seemed sympathetic to her situation. You know, her situation is something that I think everybody in this room can understand, right? She's in this community, she doesn't want to be there, and because of her particular circumstances, she's not, her mother's a Baal Shuva, and like a little wacky, I'm willing to say the word wacky at this point. Her mother is not 100% stable, I mean, you know. And
Trashing.
well, whatever, you know, I'm not going to say anything bad about her. I thought she's in a terrible situation in a lot of ways, and I had a lot of sympathy for her. And then the woman her mother remarries a Satmar guy. They have a bunch of more kids, and her father is a Lubavitcher, so consequently she's like living in this world. She doesn't even know why she got there. She has these secular grandparents that she goes to visit them all the time, and she's seeing this whole other world, you know. So she's kind of constantly torn in this situation between these different ways of being Jewish, which is what the article was about, at least from my point of view. It wasn't about Curious Joel, which people in their I think, I'm not really too shy about saying this, in their obsessive self-obsession about themselves, think that everything is about them, you know. So therefore, they can't even bother to read the rest of it. You know. So
What is the title of the article?
if you look at the subhead, it says a story of 4 generations of American Jews,
Yeah.
right? So therefore, that's what the article is about. I'm not taking responsibility for that headline. So, like, you know,
You didn't pick the title, did you?
I didn't make a title.
Right, journalists typically don't pick
Okay,
the
so,
title.
no, but you said.
But the thing is, like,
You said
but I made sure that subhead was in there because that, to me, was what the article was about.
You're complaining about people who are self-obsessive. I don't know the word you exactly use, but there's a good reason for that, because the title of it, which you didn't put in, but somebody else put in, set it up that way.
No, but the thing is, like, you know, if you want to read the stupid article instead of just reading the headline,
So
you
you're
know.
saying it's a stupid article? It's
It's
a joke.
I'm gonna meet you outside after this is over. You know, we'll deal with this, you and me.
Last question I wanted to ask was kind of to build on what Isaac said and what the gentleman said there before. He said basically that he felt, I'm going to paraphrase, he kind of slandered the whole Curiosio community. You said what damage is really done to the Curiosio, and he couldn't really respond. My question to you is, if a journalist would write an article from one perspective only, and if it was perceived by the masses as slandering community, do you feel the journalist had an obligation at that point, if it could be perceived as slandering community, to write a more objective article and give the other side? I, as a former journalist, many times had the editor throw the article back at me and said, get me more opinions from the other side to
There's
even
no
it out.
other side for Gitty. It's an article about this woman who cannot access her child. That's her story. Those are her emotional
I'm sure there are
facts.
reasons that
mean
they
she
have. I
ran
haven't
off
read the
with her
article,
kid?
but there are reasons that they have for not allowing her to access her child, right?
This is a
And it's not-
portrait of her feelings. This
What?
is not, it's not, it's a portrait
you're not fair to-
of
It's
her
not a question of
experience.
feeling.
I-
It's about 4
that?
generations of Jews.
The article is not about, it doesn't
What
pretend
is
to
it
be
about?
about both sides.
I know, but
what is-
It's about the
Right.
her.
What is the
Right.
article about? It's
So
about
you say
4
your article-
generations of Jews, not about her.
So your article is not about the reality. It's about a story that happened through the eyes of her, and that's it. So it could be totally delusional. It could be totally. She could be on drugs. It could be delusional.
Well, I mean, if
It could be
I
paranoid,
thought
but
that she
you
was
never
out of her
know.
mind, I wouldn't have written the article. You know, I thought that she was telling the truth. That was my call. I thought she was telling the truth.
But we would never know because you never presented.
I don't need to. I don't
You
really.
don't feel the need.
I don't feel the responsibility to talk to every single person and get their point of view.
Right.
You know, I don't feel like that was my job in this situation as a journalist in this situation with the space constraints and all this kind of stuff. I wanted to present the story that a lot of people in this room have. You know, about trying to deal with the fact of where they grew up and what they want to be doing with their lives and the difficulty of getting that way. And she had a particularly interesting story because she really did talk about these 4 generations of Jews.
It's not a news story, right?
It's not a news story.
hard
So
news
that's a defense. It's not a news story.
It's not a news story. It's like it happens all the time, right? Does it not happen all the time?
So this is a custody battle.
It's a custody battle set in the context of this stuff.
Mark, at one point you even praised the ex-husband for like even being a little bit more modern than the rest of the community at some point, I believe.
Yeah, it's true.
Did you even consider like asking him his opinion? I mean, I don't think it's too far off.
I asked him and he wouldn't talk to me.
Oh, okay, so.
So, you know, that's the answer.